Well, sorry for this video coming out so late. Yeah, I know. I said earlier this morning that we'd make videos on the Canadiens and the Capitals and the pre-game notes. Well, how's 3 hours before the game sound for pre-game notes? Because we do have a bunch of stuff to dive into when it comes to the Canadiens and the Capitals, some guys that are coming in, some guys that are going out, and other players from around the Montreal Canadiens organization that are saying goodbye. So, yeah, kind of a flexible day today in terms of Montreal Canadiens news. Let's talk about some of the roster stuff that relates to... You know what, let's do Washington first. Let's say them, because I do have a little bit on the Caps that I want to dive into. Take a look at this. It was posted by Stephen Wino earlier this morning. Alexei Protas, who has been out since taking a skate cut to the top of his left foot April 4, is doing some light skating with the Capitals trainer Jason Serbus observing. Spencer Carberry, head coach, psychological warfare guy, says that he expects Protas to play, although he's not giving an indication when. Now, this is a really big deal for Washington, because Alexei Protas has been one of the better, most underrated guys in the NHL, I would say, just in terms of what he is capable of doing in the top 6 of this Capitals lineup. He's young. He's 24 years old, but he's a big dude. And this season he had 66 points in 76 games played. A huge glow up from the 15 and 29 point years he had in the past 2 seasons. Protas has been so good, and this has really been a coming out party for the young Belarusian. 30 goals and 36 assists. He's been a monster. Just one of the many top 6 caliber forwards that the Capitals have deployed this year. Between Ovechkin and Lindstrom, Protas, Dubois, Wilson, and McMichael, there have been so many guys to just dominate in the top 6 of this team. And with Protas coming back, it really does help the Washington Capitals. That's going to be bad news for the Montreal Canadiens. Now, let's dive into the Habs news, because there are some other notes and extra guys that have been moved around. Firstly, this was posted about earlier on Twitter, and I guess it's a big deal. Sorta? It was posted by Habs on Reddit. It's good to see Kirby Dach traveling with the Montreal Canadiens to Washington, D.C. And included is an Air Canada picture with Kirby Dach all swagged out there with the shades, with the bag, with the hat. All of these items probably cost an arm and a leg, but he's a hockey player making millions of dollars a year, so I think he could probably afford it. This is interesting. I don't know necessarily if Kirby Dach is going to have an opportunity to suit up at any point throughout this series or throughout this playoff run. You know, crossing your fingers that the Canadiens don't just get swept in the first round, but still, Kirby Dach is with the team. He'll be hopefully recovering soon. And ultimately, you know, with all the questions for the Canadiens as to whom it is the Habs will have as their second-line center next year, I mean, Kirby Dach, he is still an option. It's just he's been hurt so much that you can't really go out there and fully rely on him to be an 82-game season in, season out type of guy. But ultimately, he's still with the team. That's good for the morale, at least. We all recognize that Kirby Dach is a teammate that Canadiens players respect and want to be around. He's a good dude. So, Kirby Dach with the team. Nice to see that. Let's move on to some other roster notes, because it was posted about here by, was this RDS? Nah, it was Patrick Friolet. That's who it is. Take a look at this. So, earlier this morning, Friolet posted about the scratches. They're on the ice in Washington this morning. Arber Xhekaj, Michael Pezzetta, and Oliver Kapanen are working with Adam Nicholas and Alex Burrows. Meanwhile, Yakemchuk is working with Eric Raymond. So, Xhekaj, he's out again. And a lot of folks have gone out there and asked questions like, okay, Why is it that Arber Xhekaj is not playing? Why does this guy, Marty St. Louis, why does he not like Xhekaj? And I think really it boils down to two things. Firstly, it's the fact that Xhekaj just isn't as good as the guys that are already playing. And secondly, it's the return of Cayden, which essentially pushed Xhekaj out of the lineup. If Marty St. Louis wanted the sheriff in today's playoff matchup, he wanted a rough, tough, and physical dude to control physicality and to just make sure that nobody pushes the Canadiens around, then okay, you could have Xhekaj in there. But if the Habs want to play a game where they have more puck-moving capability from their D, they're a little bit more solid defensively, then okay, I can understand having Struble in there rather than Arber Xhekaj, for example, because a guy like Struble, he's strong, he's big, but he's just a little bit more flexible than Arber Xhekaj, I would say. And it's not necessarily anything against that style, you know, the physicality in the playoffs. We know that it happens. We'll just see whether or not it becomes a factor in this series in particular. We had seen Ben Sherratt and Shea Weber lead the Canadiens from the back end to a Stanley Cup final just 4 years ago. So we know that that style and that mold of a defenseman works in the playoffs, and we know that that mold has a role on this team. It's just, if Marty St. Louis is saying, yeah, well, Xhekaj is just not as good at everything else than a Cayden is, or Jayden Struble is, and especially Elaine Hudson, whom you cannot decide to remove from the lineup at all. I mean, Xhekaj just seems to be the odd guy out, and that's not anything against him, it's just the way the cookie crumbles, and for Marty St. Louis, this seems to be the way that he wants to sort out his D-core. I think, you know, if there is a terrible physical incident in this game, for the Montreal Canadiens, if the Capitals are going out there and bullying the Habs just over and over, Lane Hudson gets thrown to the ice, Cole Caulfield too, Slafkovsky for some reason gets pushed around and shoved, if Patty Laine gets that too, then I think you might see Xhekaj suit up in the later games. It all depends on how the game dynamics work out, but I don't necessarily think the Habs want to play a super physical tough game. They don't want to have those Ottawa Senators, Ridley Gregg matchups every single game now, do they? Longevity is a part of being able to have a playoff run after all. So if that goes down, then maybe you see Arber Xhekaj suiting up later. But for now, it doesn't really seem to be the case. And finally, I wanted to talk about one more Canadiens guy who is leaving. Take a look at this. It was posted on Le Matin. It's Connor Hughes. Yeah, remember earlier on in the season when we were talking about the Canadiens' goaltending struggles between Primo and Montembeault, and how there was an AHL goalie who had signed that was doing really good work with Laval? Yeah, Connor Hughes is going to return to Switzerland. A Swedish defender signs. Okay, that's irrelevant. But the first part of the article here says that the Canadian-Swiss goaltender as well as defenseman Erik Brannstrom have signed with what appears to be Lausanne HC in the Swiss League. And of course, we made a bunch of videos throughout the year of Connor Hughes and his AHL dominance. This was a really big deal, especially when thinking about the other Canadiens goaltenders that were struggling earlier on in the year. Hey, could they bring up this guy from the AHL because he's their only hope? And like, it was a pretty big deal, and I guess, you know, we have to follow up on it because he is leaving. All the conversations about him netted a bunch of views, too. So, yeah, nice to see that go down. The story and the legacy of Connor Hughes will not be forgotten. So, yeah, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about him leaving the Habs. But also, what are your thoughts on all these extra roster moves from Alexei Protas, potentially playing soon, to Kirby Dach joining the team, Arber Xhekaj is out, as well as Connor Hughes leaving the team in totality. What are your thoughts on all these Canadiens news and notes? Of course, we'll make a post-game video after Capitals Montreal Game 1. It's a pretty big deal here in this part of town, but the game goes on in a few hours from now. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.